In the late 1970s, I found a school of friendly dolphins in the Bahamas. Nothing like it had ever been seen before, and the discovery opened a new chapter in the study of dolphins in the wild. The experience changed my life, and from that point on, I dedicated myself to filming, studying, and protecting dolphins and whales. My work took me to the ends of the earth. I felt an extraordinary bond with these magnificent creatures. They were friendly and curious. I came to know many of them individually. 25 years later, I was diagnosed with a disease that intertwined my life with dolphins in a way I could never have imagined. A series of extraordinary connections would lead me to set off on a quest that would take me around the world in search of the causes of my own disease and diseases afflicting both marine mammals and a growing number of human beings. But in the early days, I thought the main threat to dolphins came from spears and harpoons. My first efforts at protecting them came in Japan, where I tried to stop the slaughter of dolphins killed for food, or simply because fishermen don't like competition for fish. Film we took of the killings made headlines around the world, and some villages severely curtailed the killings. I was beginning to learn the power of a man with a camera connected to mass media. When they saw our cameras and our presence, they got very angry, and they then suspended the operation. Over the years, I returned many times to Japan to expose the brutal killings of the dolphins.
Internet.
Despite huge international protest, the fishermen refused to quit their grisly business. The means we would ultimately use to cut the market for dolphin meat would be horrifyingly ironic. If you ate that particular piece of meat, you would immediately have acute toxic poisoning.
Yes.
During the 1990s, a new and even more insidious threat than hunting had emerged. Orca and many types of dolphin around the world began to die. At first, the cause was a mystery. But of one thing there was no doubt. The dying dolphins and whales were contaminated with shocking levels of mercury and a class of chemicals called organochlorines. In the early 1980s, I traveled to the San Juan Islands off Seattle to film the resident pods of killer whales. My guide was Dr. Ken Balcom, who knows as much about these animals as anyone on Earth. I fell in love with these massive and magnificent creatures. During the middle 1990s, the population of the orcas Ken Balcom was studying plummeted.
Well, what's really interesting about that footage is that virtually all of the adult males that are in there are now deceased. We've attributed most of the mortality to PCB levels.
But it turned out that whales and dolphins weren't the only ones suffering from ocean pollution.
This was done in 1997.
In 1997, I began to feel heavily fatigued and noticed tremors in my hands. I had a hair analysis for toxic heavy metals.
You'll notice that you were high in aluminum, you were high in lead, you were moderately high in cadmium. Your mercury is what went off the chart. No, I would say that you had chronic mercury poisoning.
For me, growth of pollution in the oceans had become a very personal matter.
I was feeling shaky.
In the year 2000, film actor Ted Danson and I founded BlueVoice.org. It was not long before this nonprofit organization began to have an impact.
Heavy metal content.
Were you eating abnormal amount of fish, or were you eating? Was that a big part of your diet? Fish?
In those days, I was eating tuna steaks and swordfish steaks 2 or 3 times a week.
And they contain the highest levels of mercury. So what I did is I cut that out of my diet, and gradually over the next several years, my mercury levels came down.
We know that most of the mercury gets into our system by eating fish.
The mercury gets into the fish two ways principally in this country. It gets in from coal-burning plants in the Midwest that release mercury into the system, which floats down into the water system and then gets picked up by, the plankton, which is eaten by smaller fish and then bigger fish, until we sit down at the table and eat fish that is overladen with mercury.
Like humans, dolphins are at the very highest level of the marine food chain, so they accumulate huge levels of mercury. In Japan, we began testing dolphin meat for mercury. The levels were far above what the Ministry of Health allows in food. This is a dreadful finding, but it became one of our most effective arguments for closing down the market for dolphin meat. Once we'd established that dolphin meat showed high levels of mercury, we tested citizens of the village of Taiji who eat dolphin meat. These tests, conducted by a Japanese laboratory, show a direct correlation between consuming dolphin meat and levels of heavy metals such as mercury, cadmium, lead, and even arsenic. As I began to study the incidence of mercury poisoning in human beings, I found it was far more common than I'd imagined.
That's more than 1,000 times higher.
Dr. Jane Hightower, an internist in San Francisco, has run across the problem many times.
So essentially I had a lot of patients who had these symptoms, and I started calling them up, asking what's for dinner. And every single one of them kept coming up with the same poison. And when they stopped eating mercury, generally within 2 to 6 months in general, they all either fully recovered or were 90% recovered. But as far as for our future, it is a major issue for everyone. Because as we contaminate a major food source, we're running out of food to eat and good protein sources.
When I told my MD that I wanted to try to have a baby, he suggested that I find out what my level of mercury was because he knew that I ate a lot of fish. And so he tested my level for mercury, and it was really high. And one of the issues with mercury toxicity, and one of the reasons that it's dangerous for pregnant women to have a lot of mercury in their system, is because it affects the neurology and the development of the fetus.
What I did not know was that the high levels of mercury were also indicative of high levels of chemicals called organochlorines, chemicals linked to cancer. Mercury is only one of the contaminants found in the marine environment. The high quantities I had absorbed were an indicator of other troubles to come. There is an entire class of deadly chemicals called organochlorines that derive from pesticides, flame retardants, plastic softeners, and even baby clothes. They've had a catastrophic impact on California sea lions. Dr. Francis Gulland of the Marine Mammal Center near San Francisco is one of the world's leading experts on ocean contamination in marine mammals.
But there are high levels of both PCBs and DDTs still in California sea lions now. And we're actually doing some work looking at the importance of those in causing cancer in sea lions. And about 20% of the sexually mature or the adult California sea lions that die here in rehabilitation do have cancer.
But toxic chemicals in the oceans may not be causing cancer only in marine mammals. In 2003, I was shocked when a routine blood test led to my being diagnosed with a form of blood cancer called multiple myeloma. There are strong indications that multiple myeloma may be caused by ingesting chemical contaminants. I couldn't help but remember the high levels of mercury that had been detected in my body a few years before.
After I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, I decided to get a check on the levels of contaminants that I had in my body. And back came this massive report indicating that I had very high levels of DDEs, breakdown product of DDT. I had high levels of PCBs and high levels of hexachlorobenzene.
But how did I accumulate all those contaminants in my body? It was a mystery I was determined to pursue. Then, by an extraordinary coincidence, I discovered one of the world's leading authorities on myeloma.
We can correlate the toxic levels in you as a patient with the disease, and correlate with the exact same type of chemicals which have been found in dolphins and whales. And this is exactly what is known in dolphins, where they cannot break down type 2 dioxins, and so they accumulate, and that's what causes the problems. And so this is one of the things that we're actually currently looking at using DNA testing. I think that one of the most alarming things is this multi-page report identifies all of the different chemicals that are in our environment and can be tested and might potentially be in your body, and also the ones that you have highlighted in yellow here, which are the ones that are substantially elevated, which is also a rather large number, where the level in your system was several thousand-fold elevated. Within the genes of certain people, there may be an inability to break down some of these chemicals. And the dolphins gave us this clue in that the dolphins do not break down dioxins well, type 2 dioxins, and that puts them at a particular risk. And so we're now evaluating the same kind of thing in people.
One of the things that we are going to investigate now is the connection between levels of pesticides and other contaminants in the human body and any possible link with multiple myeloma and other cancers.
We began to search the world for data on organic pollutants causing cancer and other health problems. Because man-made persistent organic pollutants concentrate in the Arctic, one of our first stops is Iqaluit in the Canadian Arctic, where we meet Sheila Watt-Cloutier, a leader of the Inuit people.
And bioaccumulates and gets stronger and stronger in concentration as it heads to the Arctic. And as a result of that, the marine mammals that live in the Arctic sink then eat that, pick that up in their bodies, carry that in high concentrations, and then of course we, the Inuit, eat the marine mammals. By then they're in very high concentrations. Now our elders and hunters have intimate knowledge of this land, the sea ice, and have observed many disturbing changes to the Arctic climate and the environment and to the wildlife. Polar bears, ice-living seals, walrus, and some marine birds are very likely to decline, with some facing extinction.
The biggest risk what could be happening is, first of all, that the immune system is impaired. Another thing is that they might have reduced reproduction.
Well, in a number of dolphins, we find some pollutants in the body, such as organochlorine, DDT, PCB, and also we find some heavy metal, such as mercury, in the body. We know some individual dolphins has quite a high level.
During the spring of 2008, we visited Galveston, Texas, where for 2 successive springtimes there has been a mass die-off of bottlenose dolphins. Working with the Texas Marine Mammal Stranding Network, we began a search for the cause of this tragic event. Hampered by lack of funds, the Stranding Network team do heroic work in attempting to discover what is killing so many dolphins along the Texas coast. This die-off is only one of many such tragic events taking place around the world. It is clear the health of the oceans is in jeopardy, and if we do not execute a massive course correction, not only marine mammals, but humans will pay a terrible price.